Hi, 8th graders. So in lesson 4, we are going to continue on talking about the colonists coming to the New World and then how that impacted them. So a couple lessons ago, we practiced writing a letter to our family back home in Europe, and we talked about all the positive things that happened from coming over to the New World. So now what we're going to do is we're actually going to take a look at some of the barriers and some of the struggles that people, the colonists who came to the New World, actually experienced, because it was not always a positive thing. And there was actually a lot of death when people first traveled over here. So for this particular assignment, you might need to do a little bit of outside research, but you're going to create a presentation. I don't care what presentation format you use. Some options are Google Slide, Powtoons, Canva, Screencast-O-Matic if you want to record a video, Screencastify, whatever you feel comfortable with. I just want you to make sure that you're giving me details within that presentation. So your presentation needs to include 5 barriers to survival that the colonists experienced when they first came over. Now, all of these different barriers that they experienced are going to kind of intermingle. They all relate to one another, so that they're not necessarily separated out. So feel free to talk about more than one at a time, because they do kind of relate with one another. So those 5 barriers that you want to talk about are disease. Disease is something that not only affected the colonists, but it also affected the Native Americans, because the colonists did bring over some diseases that the Native Americans had never been exposed to, and vice versa. So disease is a big one. You want to make sure that you talk about that. Along with disease, this kind of goes along with it, is starvation. So it wasn't always easy for the colonists to come and find food. This is a new territory. This was new land that they weren't used to. So they didn't know what plants were safe to eat, some of the animals they hadn't been exposed to. So starvation was a very real thing that they experienced and struggled with when they first came to the New World. Another thing is Native American attacks. Obviously, the Native Americans were living on the territory at that time, and the colonists came over and they tried to take some of that land. So that's obviously going to create some tension among those two groups. And there was some pretty significant and deadly battles that happened among those two groups. Along with that, you not only have the fighting and the attacks between the Native Americans and the colonists, but you also had quarreling, which is basically another word for fighting, among the colonists themselves. Also that goes along with this is anarchy. So basically, what all of these mean, the quarreling and the anarchy, go pretty much hand in hand. But basically, the colonists came over to this new world, and they didn't have a form of government in place. So there wasn't an organized structure system put in place for them. And so they had a lot of disagreements on how to set up these colonies. And so that created a lot of unorganization and disarray within the colonies. And it caused a lot of tension. So think about these things as you are creating your presentation. Like I said, these are not necessarily all separated out. A lot of these were causes and effects for one another. So when you do your presentation, feel free to make it be more of like a flow chart, or talk about them hand in hand, instead of focusing more on number 1, disease, and then giving me information about that. But my tips and tricks for you guys is to make sure that you're always using specific details in all of your presentations to me. Those will be things I will be looking for. So if you have statistics on how many people died of disease or what types of diseases, make sure you include some of that stuff. You can always do outside research to make sure that you're giving me as much information as you can. So if you have any questions, let me know. Otherwise, good luck on this assignment, and then we will start week 2 after this. So have a good rest of your day.